but it was really this idea of a billion, right? Is how do you inspire a billion people around the world, right, to go vegan? How do you inspire a billion people around the world to take collective action? What if you could unite a billion people around the world around things like sustainability, around social impact? What if you could take all of this data? What if you could create a platform and take all of this data and use it as an instrument for social benefit, for social good, for social impact?
In 2012, Vikas Garg entered the financial world, and for the next 13 years, he helped manage multi-billion-dollar portfolios and hedge funds, and he worked from New York to California to Singapore. But then in 2017, all of that changed when Vikas decided he'd rather invest his time and energy to make the world a better place for everyone, and that kind of became his new mantra. So using his financial prowess and knowledge of data analytics and algorithms, Vikas developed an innovative social media app to use for social good. And his goal was to help 1 billion people save the planet. Now, with this app, users are encouraged to not only interact with one another, but also to leave reviews of sustainable and plant-based foods and products in restaurants and a number of different items. And in return, every time you leave a review, you're awarded a little bit of equity in 1 billion, which is pretty cool for itself. And then you're also given a little bit of money to donate to a charity, which is listed, a nonprofit that's listed on their site. And there's so many, and you'll find a lot that you already know. And in just 6 years, 1 billion has garnered over 1 million followers. And they are spread out over 187 countries, which is just remarkable. And it's now available in multiple languages, and they keep coming out with new ones all the time. So please now, if you would, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and check out all of our episodes that you can be found with like photos and extended show notes for each episode at www.howwechangethworld.co. Now, please join conversation with Vikas Garg. Hello, Vikas.
Hi, Deborah. How are you?
I'm great. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for coming on and joining me. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Good morning from Singapore.
Yeah, you're 14 hours ahead, but you look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So
I'm 14 hours in the future.
In the future, how is the future? How's the future looking? I'd like to know.
I've been sleeping most of the time.
Okay, not that much happened then. Well, I'm glad to see the world's still going to be here in 14 hours from now. But I was just mentioning, like, I don't know you. I don't haven't met you except for very, very briefly, quite a few years ago, and I do know, however, your beautiful, brilliant wife Sonia, and though I haven't seen her in about 10 years either, so please give my love to her. And you have a daughter now, correct?
I have two. We have two daughters. Yeah.
Wow.
So we have a 4.5-year-old who's a menace and
of course.
just incredible and just this incredible little vegan human being. And I've got a 8-week-old girl.
Wow! Congratulations! I didn't know that.
Who just was born into this world right at the beginning of May, and
wow.
and yeah, my wife and I couldn't be happier. Like we're delighted.
I bet that's very, very exciting. So I'm assuming that Sonia was vegan all the way through her pregnancies too, right? I mean, she's never not
Sonia, my wife. That's an interesting. I think we could probably spend a bit of time unpacking that. Our first date back in 2007 when we first met was at a steakhouse. So Sonia comes from a very red-blooded red meat eating Colorado family, both her mom and dad. And so I think the last thing that she could have ever imagined was ending up with a vegan or a vegetarian dating them, let alone marrying them. So,
right.
So Sonia is incredibly health conscious. And so, and because we have kids and, we have a small household, she's pretty much vegan 95%. Last night we went on our first date night since she gave birth, and we basically had a completely vegan meal at a restaurant. So Sonia is probably 95% of the way there.
Yeah.
The thing that is hard for her, I mean, food is easy for her. The thing that it hasn't quite clicked where she's taking action is things like leather and, shoes and fashion.
Sure.
I don't think she'll ever wear a fur coat, but there's certain things that she hasn't quite triggered yet, in spite of having a vegan husband. I've tried, but our daughters are vegan.
Are they? And she's fine with raising vegan kids?
She wasn't before she actually became pregnant, and then she started talking about, she brought it up when she was pregnant with our first, and I was blown away, because I always believed, like, hey, I've got to respect my wife, respect my wife's wishes. I am part of this minority, right, of people who think this way. And it's not fair for me to impose. All I can do is inspire. And so she brought up the conversation, and, the agreement was that if she ever felt that our children were being compromised in any way, that, and if she felt strongly about that, then she could intervene or change. And I said, okay, well, that's incredible. I'm really confident they're going to grow up to be even stronger and even healthier than the other kids. And miraculously, they're both alive. I mean, the 8-week-old is only breastfeeding right now, right?
Sure.
So that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The 4.5-year-old is just crushing it in life. And, she's healthy, she's beautiful, she's got all of her nutrition, and just like any other kid, she takes her supplements and, gum drops and all this sort of stuff. And she's super healthy. So we're blessed.
That's beautiful.
For now. Yeah.
Well, we jumped right into the vegan conversation we put the cart before the horse a little bit, but so let's back up and talk a little bit. I might jump around a little bit with you, but I want to start with sort of an overview of the company that you founded in 2017. It's called Abillion. And usually I think when people hear the term billion or a billion or 1 billion or anything, you're thinking $1 billion or a billion stars, maybe, or maybe people. But there aren't that many nouns that we put next to billion next to, right? So I think it's a very clever name in that way, because it gets your attention. But, I think, and it's very aspirational, because as we'll talk about your goal, it's an aspirational title for a company. But, anyway, it could not be more, when you find out that it's a social, it's not a social enterprise so much, but a social impact tech company, that really changes it all of a sudden. You're like, oh, $1 billion, what does that mean? How is that for social good? So, let's talk about, it couldn't be more aligned, first of all, than what this podcast is about: making the world better, changing the world better, doing everything we can to encourage other people to do that, to create a more sustainable world. So tell us, just as sort of an overview, first of all, what Abillion is, what you do, and what it's all about, if you would.
First of all, I just want to say what a privilege it is to be on this show with you on my Friday morning. I have actually never heard somebody say 1 billion stars.
Oh.
And so that makes you a very, very, very special individual.
Oh, well, there are 1 billion stars.
I know, but
trillion.
I mean, I sit down all the time with people in business, with people, investors, and nobody's ever said that. And so, this is that's a really special thing. And knowing how special and spiritual your daughter is, I can only say, that's nice. I'm gonna use that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
But that's, you're right. And we wouldn't have stopped at 1 billion. We would have said billions, but there's a show on Showtime called Billions, and it's about money and hedge fund managers and this and that. So that was already taken in terms of billions.com. But it was really this idea of a billion, right? Is how do you inspire a billion people around the world, right, to go vegan? How do you inspire a billion people around the world to take collective action? What if you could unite a billion people around the world around things like sustainability, around social impact? What if you could take all of this data? What if you could create a platform and take all of this data and use it as an instrument for social benefit, for social good, for social impact? So I was sitting here in Singapore. I moved here 8 years ago, and we're going to be coming up on 6 years starting this company on July 10th. So just in a few days.
Congratulations, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Very busy 6 years.
I've managed to keep it alive for the last 6 years, but it's incredible. Like we have every single day, we have people in over 100 countries getting on a billion, and using it to create social change, and using it to find things, and using it to become vegan or live their best vegan life, right? And that's really what we are trying to do, is really build this inspiring ecosystem for change that makes this lifestyle inspiring, makes this lifestyle easy, makes it a lot more accessible. Often for a lot of people, they don't have a sense of community around them when they decide to take the plunge. And so we give them that community of people around the world, and we want to make the journey a lot easier for people. At the end of the day, what we want to do is really build an ecosystem which includes commerce, which includes the ability for people to start businesses and grow those businesses on our platform.
Wow,
by
that's interesting.
Effectively connecting into this world of early adopters, right? It's like, whenever you start something, you need to find your tribe. You need to find your first 100 customers, then your first 1,000 customers, then your next 10,000 customers. And so we've done that. It's been about 7 or 8 months, but we launched a marketplace, which now people around the world, you could get on there and start selling things. I get on there every weekend. This weekend, I'm going to be baking bread. And I that was my COVID hobby. I make sourdough bread, and of course it happens to be vegan. And so I sell it through the app, and all of the money that people pay for that bread gets donated to charity through the app. So we're just really trying to create a very different kind of social media platform. A lot of the ideas behind A Billion kind of sprung up in the midst of the 2016 U.S. election. I think like a lot of Americans were very confused about what happened in that election. I think,
and still are.
And I think I don't think that that's a political party thing. I think that I think overall, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you're probably very confused. And I think one of the things that we saw was, like the role of social media, and potentially the destructive role of social media in terms of election interference, in terms of the broader sort of misinformation that we see on there every single day. And I just felt like, a lot of what we were seeing in Silicon Valley and in tech was very nefarious. It was, hey, we're going to connect people around the world, but then we're going to check. We're not going to have any values. We're not going to have any sort of responsibility over what happens next. And I just felt really an urge to see if it was possible to actually connect people, but
on social media.
Build a platform where we connect people, and then we use that data for social good instead of anarchy.
Right. to name one thing. Well, okay. So that's really interesting. I want to ask you something before you go on then. And that is, like you mentioned, like Sonia's 95%, your wife is 95% vegan. This app, you meant, very few, what percentage of the world is vegan? Maybe 2%, 1%? Not much, right?
When I talk to people, I ask them that question is, what if 1% of the world went vegan? And I often, there is no stat, right?
Right. Because nobody really knows, but
nobody
generally
really knows.
speaking.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
look,
pretty low.
if the world is, if the world is 8 billion, 7.5, 8 billion people right now, you've probably got 100 million people in China that, don't eat meat,
Or dairy.
and that's a combination of people who don't eat meat for out of choice, and people who don't eat meat because they cannot afford it. And then I don't think they'd call themselves vegan per se.
Right. They just don't happen to.
Yeah. And then you've got a lot of people in places like India who live in the rural countryside who, are vegetarian, who don't necessarily consume animal products or even dairy products that often.
Right.
So we're probably already at, depending on how broadly we want to talk about it. But I think if we talk about it from the perspective of people who are really choosing and identifying with what it means to be vegan,
right,
that number is probably, less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
Yeah.
All right. Well, because I guess what I want to ask is that you use the word vegan, which is has a very specific connotation. It's not even just no meat, no dairy. It has a whole, like you said, the leather, the animal rights and all of that. And I'm wondering, are you also trying to appeal? And again, we haven't gotten into what the app even does yet and what Abillion does altogether, but just as a sort of a frame around it, are you trying to entice or encourage people to become members or followers? What do you call people? Members? I guess they'd be members, right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be joining the community. Yeah. You'd be downloading an app or getting on our website.
And that makes you a member. Okay. Yeah. So, but I mean, what if they're just sustainability oriented? Like maybe they,
for sure,
everything else they do, is sustainable, but maybe they haven't yet taken the leap to either dairy or meat and not eating those, or maybe never will. Are you also trying to encourage them to join?
Absolutely, Deborah, right? We're not going to get to 1 billion of anything, of, even 1 million or 1 billion of people if we're not welcoming. And one of the things that we did see on social media, when we were looking at this, in fact, when, Jessie, your daughter, Jessie, and I were talking back in 2017, was that this community is, of course, supercharged, right? And in social media, you can kind of dig these holes for yourself, where you're surrounded by, a group of other people that are living the same values, and sort of be in your own bubble. And then, really kind of, there's a lot of attacking going on, right? Between communities, et cetera. There's a lot of trolling going on. So one thing is we wanted to create kind of a safe place where the mission was very much front and center. Like, you're not going to join Abillion if you're like a hardcore meat eater that likes to hunt and you're just not there yet. You're not even open-minded about that, right? Or interested. You might join Abillion if you are a meat eater, but you're looking to reduce your meat consumption. You might join Abillion if you care about the planet, you care about the environment, or you care about other social issues that have to do with like things like world hunger or things like plastics, just basic, or, you might be looking for gluten-free food, like gluten-free options, right? And so there's kind of like, communities that I would say are overlap or are very, basically they overlap.
Sure.
And what I think ultimately is that our vegan movement, if we can be open-minded and at the same time welcoming, our vegan movement can really become the cornerstone or the linchpin or the center of the global sustainability movement, right? So it's like in every movement, you've got your power users, you've got like in every platform, in every business, in every company, you've got your core,
hardcore,
right? People who, and that core like will change over time, meaning people will come into that, people will leave that, right? And our job is to figure out how do we welcome as many people into this ecosystem, and then over time, how do they naturally become part of that core? So about half of our users around the world, half of the people, I don't like to use that word users, But it's like a tech thing, but like
members.
half of the people, right? Half of the people that are in our community that are on a billion every single day are not vegan or vegetarian.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. That was probably, I could have just asked that question because I'm really happy to hear that, because there's other things you can do research on and learn about. They're like skincare products and hair care products and all sorts of things. So it's not only food oriented. I'm just thinking what you were talking about is what we used to say, you preach to the choir, but open the windows. You're preaching to the choir, but you open the windows. So, you want people to just kind of be tangentially involved, and then eventually maybe they'll come sit in a pew or whatever, to use an old analogy.
You want to have the doors open, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what we need to do so much in our society anyway, is just, can we just all we don't have to have every belief has to be the same. It didn't used to be that way, and it doesn't work that way. We have to religiously believe one way, politically one way, food another way, and we can all hang out together still.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is the part where it's like, if you can find common ground with somebody, right? If you can find one thing to agree on, it just opens up the conversation and opens up the open-mindedness on both sides so much. And so it's important that we talk about sustainability. It's important that we talk about social issues. It's important that we talk about inequities in society and health, right? And it's really, really important that we talk about animals, right? Because this is more of a belief. I also see this, but I have not yet kind of really quantified it or created stats on this using the data that we have. But we see this, right? It's like we ask people when they join, like, hey, are you vegan? What do you identify with? And then we see over time that people change that identity. It's kind of like on Facebook, how you're single when you join Facebook and you're 18, and then you're in a relationship in your 20s, and then you're married in your 30s. It's like we've seen that as well. We've seen people who've joined the community and they're not vegan, and then over time, thanks to feeling positive about it, and at the same time being introduced to things that maybe they're looking at, reducing their meat consumption out of health, but then they find that stickiness because they also start relating to, like, oh wow, like there's so much destruction happening. There's so much, there's so many other issues that are tied to this, including things like world hunger and health and all of these other things.
Climate change.
Exactly, that it just makes sense to try, and then they get hooked and they get excited about it, and so it's really interesting, and we find a lot that at the end of the day, that one of the big reasons that people stick with being vegan is because they discover the inequities, or rather they don't want to be part of them anymore, and they discover this love or newfound. I always say every kid loves animals, right? Like, you ever ask a kid?
They do.
Right? Every kid on the planet loves animals.
Yeah.
But
just
so
forget.
yes, exactly. They rewind and they rekindle that sort of, romance that they have with the animal.
That definitely happened to me. That's exactly what happened to me. Because you kind of get separated from them in life. And then, being vegan definitely raises your awareness and your love for animals too. Whether your animal loving makes you go vegan, or veganism makes you love animals more, there's a connection there you absolutely cannot discount. But I wanted to ask you about health a little bit, because I did hear you speaking on another podcast, before we go more into the program and the business, about your own personal background, because I know you were raised Hindu in India. Were you vegetarian just by culture and religion, and by birth, like your kids are now, vegan. But then when you moved to America, your parents, all of you started eating dairy, and then your parents, a lot of dairy. Cheese pizza was your food group, you said.
It was a slice of New York City pizza was basically my food pyramid growing up.
Okay, it's hard to say that's not a tempting thing, but you can have vegan cheese pizza now and be okay. But your parents both had health issues that developed that were pretty consistent with what dairy eating
Yeah.
populations have. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
If you're willing.
I know, absolutely. And it was a big reason. It was a big part of my why, you know, for going vegan. Because I was vegetarian for a long time. I was vegetarian all the way through my 20s. And to be honest, like I loved leather. I would never wear fur. I never had any sort of desire for, but I loved, leather, and it was normal.
Sure.
I had this romantic view. I went to PETA rallies when I was a kid, and yet we never talked about leather. We never made that connection until it sort of clicked, right? And again, it was people like your daughter Jessie who were really instrumental in kind of and inspirational, and a lot of discussions there. But it was really interesting. Yeah. In India, our vegetarian diet back in the 1980s, I'm 42 years old, this year. And so I was born in the early 80s. And, I like to say I'm in the inaugural class of millennials, because if you look up the definition of millennial on Wikipedia, it's 1981. So I just made it. But my wife does not agree with that definition. She's like, yeah, dude, you're too old for that. But so,
hey, if Wikipedia says it, it's true.
Exactly. Right. And so, we moved to the States. It was my brother and I and my mom and dad in 1985. And we grew up in Queens and New York City. The obvious thing that most immigrant families do, they land at JFK and they move to Brooklyn or Queens. Yeah. And then they spend the rest of their lives there. And my parents are still in that same house that we got a few years later. And and then we didn't really think about it. The thing that we started to do was we started to go to, instead of going to our neighborhood market, like the equivalent of today's farmers market in the US, like in India, we call that a sabji mandi. It was basically, it means a vegetable market. Okay. That's where my mom would have gone and bought, fresh fruits and vegetables. And, we ate fresh fruits and vegetables and lentils and grains, right? We didn't eat a lot of dairy. Dairy was a luxury item in India at that time. So you would go to an Indian restaurant and that's the only place where you would eat something like paneer, which is Indian cheese. And, and that's where you would go and your tomato soup would have some cream in it. And it was always seen as a big luxury. Today you go to Indian restaurants anywhere in the world and they have a whole page. It's called a paneer menu. And that's what they have is vegetarian food. And it's really bastardizing Indian food, in my opinion. But that when we moved to America, we started eating like Americans, except the vegetarian versions. So it was Cheetos and Doritos and Frosted Flakes with milk and
everything processed.
And bagels with cream cheese, New York City, and buttered muffins and pizza, a lot of pizza, right? And it was just, we didn't think about it because actually
you're in the culture. You're swimming in a culture of that.
Well, everything that we saw on TV was you had this incredibly positive association with dairy. We had these got milk campaigns with all of these beautiful, people
models
saying how great milk is. I still remember when we fell in love with pizza, my brother couldn't tolerate cheese. So my brother used to do something really gross, which was he used to take all the cheese off of a slice and put it on there. And I don't know if you've ever seen a slice of pizza without cheese on it. It kind of looks
if you're vegan and you can't get, I have. In fact, I think I've done that. So I'm as gross as your brother.
Exactly. Right. And so I always was dude, what are you doing? You can't, you're making us look bad. We're already these weird Indian kids, and but it was because he felt allergic to it. He didn't feel good after he ate it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And, and so, it was funny. We just became kind of programmed to consume a lot of dairy. And if I look at photos of us from when we arrived in America, and I look at photos of us when we were 5 years later, 6 years later, 10 years later, we were all, we were all
round.
Very round. Exactly. Yeah. It's a good, nice way to put it.
It's a cultural, it's a statistical. It's not an anomaly. It's what happens when people who come from all over the world, where their meat is very small amounts, if at all, and dairy is non-existent. They come here. I mean, that's very typical. You can almost expect it. 5-10 years later, here comes a weight, here comes a disease, because we live on, So
absolutely, and it was interesting because there's a lot of reasons for it. I was talking to Dotsie Bausch yesterday, just about 24 hours ago. Dotsie's, of course, incredibly inspiring. She's the cyclist in the Game Changers.
Oh yeah, I was great. Remember that? She was like the oldest athlete, I think, wasn't she?
She won. She won one or two medals at the 2010 Olympics, if I'm not mistaken. But just phenomenal. She's really inspiring. And today she spends all of her time. She lives in Orange County, but she spends all of her time up in Sacramento, lobbying and talking to the industry, talking to schools, and trying to get these changes passed, all these bills passed and propositions passed in California.
For what?
Well, she runs a nonprofit called Ditch, Ditch for Good or Ditch Dairy, right?
Okay.
And it's all about dairy consumption. So she was telling me that, we have been programmed, even in the school system in America, we have been programmed. There was an act in 1946, which basically brought dairy into American public schools and made it compulsory to give kids cartons of milk. So, look, I mean, growing up in the 80s, there was definitely like, it was all around us. It's like, hey, milk is good for you. Here's milk. Here's milk in school. Here's strawberry milk,
birth,
and chocolate
for me.
milk.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we had it from infancy.
Exactly. So
what happened with your parents then?
Yeah. So my mom and dad, my mom, I think today, all of the female reproductive issues and sort of the issues that have to do with the reproductive system that are linked to dairy consumption my mom has had. My mom has been through cancer now. She's a cancer survivor 2 times over. First with breast cancer about 15 years ago. And then most recently last year, she was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer, which again, we know that there's a big link to dairy and ovarian cancer. She has walked back from that and managed to survive, and she's coming to Singapore in next week, which I'm super excited about.
Beautiful.
So it's going to be her.
Yeah.
So that's a big step for her, because that's from New York City. That's a 19-hour flight. It's the world's longest flight.
Wow.
So that's taken
that's a long flight.
So surgery, chemotherapy last year. That was, I was in New York a lot last year, and but my mom's been vegan now for 5-6 years, and it's changed her life. Like a lot of the swelling, a lot of the bloating, a lot of the inflammation, a lot of the side effects that, from the chemotherapy, from the radiation that she had, a lot of just the issues with her body, her spirituality, her mentality, just by going vegan, it brought in completely new sense of purpose to her life. And at the same time, it brought a whole new perspective on cooking. It made the whole home healthier. And she is incredibly healthier for it. And likewise with my father. My father had heart problems. He had his first stent put in 2005. And then he ended up in around Memorial Day weekend in 2009. He had a triple bypass. And that, that scar also, it's like about this big, right? Changed his life forever. He didn't go vegan for a while after that, but I think, again, my passion for it.
But he did.
And he went vegan eventually.
Okay.
My dad's one of these guys that can be tempted. So, if like somebody from India shows up at the house with a box of sweets, that are made up with dairy,
yeah,
he's not going to resist.
but there's this I remember talking to a customer years ago, and I was talking to him about going vegan, and he said, I really, really want to be vegan. He said, but I just have this one thing that every night for my whole entire life, I like to, right before I go to bed, I drink a tall glass of milk. And he said, that's the only reason. He said, other than that, I could go vegan. And I'm like, well, so go vegan and just have a glass of, who says that we have to be 100% to make a difference? And I think that's so important, because that scares people to say, oh, you can never have this for the rest of your life. You can never have a sweet that somebody brings you from India. There are some people like Jessie who has never, I don't think, had one bite of anything since the day she went vegan. She's just that kind of a person.
Yeah.
Me, on the other hand, I just spent 3 months in Belize, and although I've been vegan since, I think, since 2011, I had dairy for the first time. I had things, I couldn't get anything. It was really difficult.
Yeah.
And even though I wouldn't believe that I would have broken my, commitment, but I did. And I think it's important to say that you don't have to be perfect to make a difference. And now that I'm back in the United States and I have access to, actually, we should get back into Abillion, because I had vegan sushi last night right down the street from here, which was unbelievable. And so today I did a review of it on Abillion. So I want to talk about the app.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was fun. I can't believe I joined before, but I wasn't active. So I still had an account, and I was like, okay, now I got to get serious about this.
Oh, thanks. So well, I got to connect with you. What's your username?
Is it my email? I don't know. Is it my email?
It might be. Maybe it's just or your name or something. I'll search for you on the app.
Okay. I'll look when we get off.
Yeah.
But
so just touching,
anyway,
just touching on the health part. I think that, my father was diabetic before he had heart problems. My mom never had heart problems my mom never had problems with her health. She was incredibly healthy until sort of her first bout with cancer. And my mom and dad came to America. They didn't drink. They never smoked. They were incredibly healthy. And so when these health problems started happening, it was confounding. It was like, where is this coming from? Like, here are two people, and I was in my 20s in New York City, and I was doing everything, right? It's like
drinking, smoking, eating everything,
right?
Yeah.
All of it, right? And everything that's related to like going out and having a great time and whatnot. And I started to think about food. I started to look at I started reading research that was talking about the links between dairy consumption and the hormones and bovine leukemia and breast cancer in America. And I started seeing research where it was saying that, 40, 50, even 60% of women's breast cancer cases, there's traces of things like hormones for bovine leukemia. And I was like, why aren't we hearing about this stuff more? Like, if this is true, or even if it's not true,
even if it's partially true,
even if it's partially true, we should be hearing about it, and there should be more research about it. And why isn't there a lot more research about it? And why aren't doctors talking about it? Right. And I remember when, I went vegan, and I completely stopped consuming dairy, so many of my health problems completely cleared up. Like, my acne cleared up, and I just just shrunk down as a person.
Really?
And and I just had a lot more energy and vitality. And, and I started to just really, that was the big aha moment for me. I was like, what if the things that we're eating, and then I was like, wow, I'm so stupid. That is so obvious. Like,
it's so obvious, but
the only thing we do, like,
it's
for
not
my
because
dog, if I was just going to say, for my dog, like, there's only one input in his life, which is what we used to put inside of his mouth. Right. And it was like, and we knew that for our dog, how important what he eats is, and for his vitality. And so we really took care of him that way. And I was like, wait, it's the same thing here. How are we not thinking about this more?
Well, I just would argue that the reason that we didn't is because we trusted people like the American Medical Association, the American Dairy Association,
Right.
the lobbyists
Right.
are paying for a lot of access, and that's how we get milk in the schools. And I mean,
Right.
the information we've gotten, and when you look at the amount of advertising, the amount of corporations who are making things purposefully to taste delicious that are filled with fat and dairy and meat. I mean, it's a challenge. You have to really think about it. You have to really make a commitment to say, I'm not going to just do what the average American's doing, because it's killing the average American, and statistics will bear that out every day of the year. So, I mean, I think we're all sort of victims of that. And then we kind of just have to take back the ownership of our lives and our health. But I don't think that people were stupid. I think it's just like we are swimming in the culture of that. And it's you have to swim upstream to make a different choice. So I don't think anybody can really beat themselves up until they know. But once they know, then it's your decision, right? Once you understand that everything you eat and really look at the facts of everything you eat, then it's on us, right? It's on our
absolutely. I mean,
shoulders.
look, it's plain and simple. We've all been hoodwinked, right? And you could be the smartest person in the room, but if all of the information and the statistics and the research reports and everything you're reading, you're just being lied to. You're effectively being defrauded, right? And that's the thing. It's like, I think the American consumer has been defrauded by by our governments, by
Plus
our
it tastes really good.
And we
don't have rock hard. Yeah. So, but now there's so much vegan, like that vegan sushi I had last night was wonderful. So let's get into a little bit of what Abillion is, because it's so important. And I really want people to know about this app and know about this business, because I mean, you're killing it. It's taking off, and you had a vision was really ahead of your time. So yeah, let's talk about the app. Like maybe, I don't know if you want to start with how the app works, if you want to just kind of talk about the bigger, social giving, or whatever angle you want to start with.
Sure. So, we are at the core, we are a consumer review app, right? So think of TripAdvisor and what TripAdvisor did for travel and for hotels, 25 years ago. It gave people a real window into and transparency into hotels at a time where, a lot of people just would go off of what their travel agents were saying and where they, where they'd go, and were unhappy. Or a lot of other platforms like that. More recently, we draw a lot of inspiration from a company called Vivino, which is this review platform for wine that really helps make people's experiences around wine better. And so we sort of did the same thing, which is, hey, let's create, 6 years ago, I set off to say, hey, let's create a consumer review platform for the vegan movement. This is about food at restaurants. This is about products that people are buying at the store and online. Let's give people a voice. And then let's constructively use that voice to expand the market, right? So how can we, create better supply, show people, if we can get people to start posting reviews of things, then we can start helping people find the best things. And for a long time as a vegan, I was not having good options. I'd go to the store and I'd buy something and it was crap. Yeah. Or I'd go to a restaurant and I was just not really impressed. Yeah. Or I was using other platforms and I was going to Japan and eating falafel. And then I was going to, China and eating falafel. And I was just like, there's much more to this. I want to be able to go to
more. Yeah.
I want to be able to go to Tokyo. I want to be able to have food at like an awesome, cool, trendy restaurant in Tokyo. And I want them to really give thought and prepare something amazing for me. And I want that to be on the menu. And so I kind of was like, how do you actually create that? How do we get data to businesses? How do we inspire businesses? How do we create a platform for consumer advocacy that makes the experience of being vegan or choosing vegan better for everyone, better for the consumer, better for the business? How do we get businesses to a place where people are ordering that option, so businesses see that there's an opportunity in it? How do we get consumers to demand better? And how do we create this whole ecosystem around change that then also helps this entire industry grow and prosper? So that's really what abillion is all about. And one of the interesting things that we've done that is very different than, like, let's say, TripAdvisor and its generation, social, like, on, like, I would say that, like, the internet was not so social in the late 90s, early 2000s, when TripAdvisor started. But when we look at, like, today, people are used to sort of a user experience that's similar to Instagram or TikTok. And that's really what we built also, was really, hey, how do we're building this core utility of helping people find things and helping people have a voice, giving people that voice to effectuate change and to say what they like and don't like, and putting that all on a map. But let's also bring a community together. Let's make that whole experience very social.
And that's the social media part, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So people can comment. So I can say I went to a restaurant and had this great meal, or I went to this grocery store and found this great product, or whatever it is, and just post about it like you might post about it on Facebook or something, but you're posting to a specific community. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like a social review platform that now has become a social commerce or a social marketplace. And we're helping people around the world launch vegan businesses. People are buying and selling. People can come on board in more than 40 countries around the world now and start selling and plug their bank accounts in and getting paid when they create vegan products. And so in a way, like, for me, the dream has been is how do we create, we draw a lot of inspiration from companies like Etsy, companies like Kickstarter, companies like companies like TripAdvisor and Vivino. And how do we bring all of this together in a way that makes sense to help build and grow the whole global vegan community? That's what the app is all about. And I'm really proud to say, like, we've got over 1 million people now on abillion from around the world, from around over 187 countries.
Oh, is it up to 187? That's almost the whole. There's only like 190 some countries in the world.
I think there's like 240
are there over 200?
Some odd.
Oh, there are? I didn't.
That are recognized by the United Nations.
Oh, right? I didn't know there were that many. I thought it was one.
There's a lot
how
of
many are in the UN? Yeah.
But but what's really interesting is in some of these places like Namibia or Iraq, we might have 1 or 2 people that, like, have somehow found us, or in Cuba.
That's how it starts.
But that was the challenge for us in the beginning. I'm sitting here in Singapore. I moved here 8 years ago from California. And the idea was, how do we know that this is a global problem. How do we build a singular user experience that anyone, anywhere in the world can use? Now we've launched the app in 5 or 6 different languages. 2 weeks ago, we just launched the app in French, which is really cool. So the app's available in French and Italian and Spanish. It's available in Brazilian, Portuguese, and soon Mandarin. But all the content on the app can be translated. There's thousands of posts being created every single day, and all of that content can be translated in any language anywhere in the world.
So I can go to Paris, for example, and in English read about a French restaurant. Is that what you're saying? Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. You'll see
impressive.
reviews and posts pop up from people in France or in Paris where you are.
Wow.
And then if you click a button, you can translate all of that. So really powerful.
You've been busy.
We have been busy. And, one of the cool things about the platform, I had no idea, like, if you ask anybody anywhere in the world, like if you ask somebody in America, like, hey, tell me about a plant-based burger, they're going to say the Impossible Burger or the Beyond Burger. Yeah. But we have more than 5,000 plant-based burgers from around the world just on our platform, unique plant-based burger options.
5,000. I saw you had 30,000 like meat options.
I think that number is probably
plant-based. Higher.
From the last time, from 30,000, it's probably closer to 40,000 plant-based meat products today on the platform. Yeah. And we've got around 550,000 consumer products across food, beauty, and fashion. So you can use abillion to find your next pair of sneakers or your next bag, or you can use it to find your next, eyeliner or mascara, or you can use it to find your next meal. We have 125,000 restaurants globally that are on our platform. And I think one of the coolest things that we do is we send all of this data back to the businesses. Why? Because we want them to improve the experience. And I'll just give you one example. In a market like Singapore, when I started, there were less than 1,000 vegan options across about 6,000 restaurants that we looked at menus. You know, we scraped the internet for restaurant menus. And we found like that less than 2% of options on menus at restaurants in Singapore were vegan.
I believe that.
Today we have more than 30,000. I think we have about 32,000 options at around 6,000 restaurants. So that's really in 5 years we've helped expand.
That's incredible growth. That's incredible. And do you think I'm sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
No, it's just we've expanded. Because we're sending all this data back to businesses. That's
what I was going to ask.
Inspire them. We're getting Japanese restaurants to compete for who's got the best vegan Japanese food. Last night I went to an Israeli restaurant, an Israeli seafood restaurant, and thanks to our work, thanks to me, thanks to my personal work with the chef, but also thanks to our work getting content back out to these businesses. I'm really proud to say that this Israeli seafood restaurant has an amazing dedicated vegan menu, right?
Is this in Singapore or in Israel?
In Singapore. No, in Singapore.
Oh, Israeli restaurant in Singapore?
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you that.
Seafood restaurant.
Yeah, that's incredible. Seafood, all vegan seafood?
Well, no, they didn't have vegan seafood. They don't necessarily believe in like, kind of like the sort of whole mock meat thing, but they're just really delicious, natural, a lot of, lentils and vegetables and.
But you said it's a seafood restaurant, right?
It's a seafood restaurant. So they have seafood
and then they also have these other options?
And then they have these amazing, whole, very nutritious, whole plant-based food, vegan options that, let me tell you, I was probably the only person, my wife and I were the only people, around the table that chose the vegan options. And everybody was looking at what we were eating.
That's happened to me before too. That brings up 2 points to me. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East before I did what I'm doing now. Like 15 years I worked with the Middle East, and both in Israel and a lot of Arab countries around Israel. And Israel, first of all, has one of the largest vegan and vegetarian populations in the world. So I'm sure they're probably, I don't know if you're going to use Hebrew soon, but that would be a good one. And there's so many great, I think this idea of, because I really try not to eat processed food myself. So, I do eat a lot of lentils and rather than Impossible Burgers. Sometimes I do, but I'll do both. And so I was curious when you said that. So some of the restaurants, or maybe a lot of the products or restaurants are less processed and less like mock meats.
It just depends. It just depends.
They're both, right? They're both available. Okay.
Yeah, it just depends. It just depends on, it depends on the restaurant. It depends on the chef. Some chefs love cooking with plant-based meat, and there are some amazing restaurants here that have delicious Impossible Burgers, or and that's wonderful because it provides something for people who want to have that indulgence. And I'm always happy to try everything. For me, the challenge is I've never had meat in my entire life.
Oh, that's so different, right?
I've never had calamari. So when somebody gives me vegan calamari, I'm like, oh, okay. Does this taste like calamari? Like, I have no reference point.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Which is I didn't think cool about that's interesting.
It's kind of cool because I'm just thinking about it. Well, is this food that I like? I'm just thinking about it.
Not does it taste like the original?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Well, please talk about the other really important parts of Abillion, because you're giving back so much to so many organizations. And I was surprised, even after making one review, that I already got
What'd you get?
A reward. I got, like, how much you mean?
Yeah, did you get like $1.50?
I got $1.20. I got
$1.20.
All I did was one review. It took me a few minutes. 2 points I wanted to make about making the review. One of them is that, I got $1.20. And so I took, so the dollar, and I want to explain this. So a dollar gives me equity in the company, which blows my mind. Yes. And then the 20 cents I gave to, I gave it specifically to OPS, which is Oceanic, OPS. I can't
Give it to
remember that.
Sea Shepherd.
No, OPS.
Ocean Preservation Society.
Preservation Society, OPS, Louis Ahoyas is,
Yes.
And which I love. I had featured them in a book I wrote. So I was very excited, like, oh my gosh, there's people I know on here that I can direct my 20 cents to OPS or to Mercy for Animals or someone like that. So I was thrilled. And I didn't even spend any money. I just wrote a review. And so now my favorite organizations are getting money from the review. So can you explain just a little bit how that works?
Yeah,
it's a huge part of it.
So honestly, I think we're as a business model or as a platform, we are what in the industry we would call user generated content, right? So it means that like we've just created kind of the framework, right? But everything you see on Abillion is the voice of the people. It's what people like yourselves are saying and doing around the world, right? And if people don't show up every day, and especially in the beginning, how do you get people to actually come and create the content, create everything that you see there?
How do you inspire them?
Less than 1% of people on TikTok will ever create a TikTok video. Less than 1% of people on Instagram actually create content on Instagram.
Really? Right? Less than 1%? Yeah. There's so much content.
I think so. And
it's low anyway.
So there's so much content, right? There's so much content, but most people are just there browsing and looking at stuff, right? And that's okay because those people do a lot of other things that help those businesses become valuable. Right. So you need both. Right. And for us in the beginning, one of the things that, we had to really think about, like the proverbial chicken and egg, is how do we get people to start using something when it's slow, when it's clunky, when it's breaks down, when it's not very fast, and by the way, it's like something new. And how do you rip people away from the time that they're spending on Instagram and, and Facebook?
Yeah, to entice them.
And so for me, it was, I started looking at animal sanctuaries, started talking to animal sanctuaries, and I've over my life supported a lot of animal rights and animal welfare and animal sanctuaries, and volunteered. And I just felt like, let me start talking to a lot of the animal sanctuary founders that I know, to see if, they could help. So I didn't feel like, a lot of people will pay influencers or they'll spend a ton of money on marketing and branding and advertising. And I just felt like the time was not right for that. Like we had a crappy product. We had a clunky app.
When you start, just to say it's not anymore. I don't remember it then, but
thank you.
Of course it starts that way. But now it's like a race car. It's beautiful.
I appreciate it. Oh, thanks,
Deborah. I love it.
But it's still not there yet. And I think that, I think that it really, in the beginning, it was about how do you bring that tribe, those group of really passionate early adopters on board. And I just didn't feel like, I'd have conversations with influencers and say, give me, $5,000 and I'll create posts about you. And I'm like, well, can you use
it's all fake and it's fake stuff, right?
And I was like, can you use the app? And they're like, oh, I don't need to use the app. And I was like, so you're not. So we started talking to animal sanctuaries, and what we did was we realized that there was an opportunity to really create like a global coalition of sanctuaries. And instead of spending and, pissing away money on marketing, what if we could actually create real impact and build a user experience where this choice that people are making, what did you do yesterday? Well, you ate something or you used something vegan, and then you shared information about it, what you liked and didn't like on Abillion, which helps other people make better decisions around, the vegan products that they buy or the food that they eat at restaurants. So you're helping this community at large. And what we're doing is we're then backing that up. It's like, hey, you're helping us build this instrument, this company, and we're rewarding you with a stake. Imagine if YouTube did that. Like YouTube, you can make money on YouTube, you can make money on TikTok, but you know where the real money is in TikTok and YouTube? It's the ownership. It's the control. And getting back to what we saw in 2016 with the US election, I felt like if we can put ownership of our business in the hands of our community, the people that are here really helping to build the company, what could be greater than that? So I think we've given equity out now to more than 30,000 people around the world own a stake in a billion. And that's just been an incredible thing for me. And on top of that, people when they make a choice, when they make a vegan choice, and when they share information about that, we reward them with up to $1, depending on, the quality of the post and how much your engagement and your history with the community. So basically, how much work are you putting into the community, right? We reward you $1 in equity, and we reward you with up to another $1, so you could actually earn up to $2. We'll reward you with another $1, up to another $1 to donate, to save animals, to plant trees, to to put food on the table for hungry children in parts of Africa, and support some certain humanitarian causes that are vegan. For example, in the Ukraine right now, we support a vegan kitchen that's giving out vegan meals to.
Really, I didn't see all of that. I'm going to go back and read them all, because there's so many of them.
There's around 60 or 70 partners around the world that we support.
How many? 60
or 70 at any time.
Goodness. Yeah. Okay. Cause I was trying to look here, because I've tried to see, I'm trying to look on my notes to see what the number is of how many. Oh, I think this one, it says, this is older, but you've donated about $2 million to a billion partners.
Almost $3 million. Almost $3 million.
So you've donated $3 million just by people making a review. Yeah. You give them money. They don't. Oh my God. Right. And there's so many ways. This is, talk about win-win. There's like 10 wins here. Like there's no wins. Yeah. No one's not winning.
Yeah. So it's really, and we've brought a great group of people together around the world. We've helped people in Argentina and South Africa go vegan, and it's such a beautiful thing. We just need to grow, and we need the entire movement, the vegan movement and the sustainability movement around the world. We need people like Jessie and all of her friends to really get behind a billion, and and help. So one of the things that a billion is, we talked about helping 1 billion people go vegan. The other billion is, how do we build a business? How do we build an incredible technology business that one day will have donated $1 billion to create impact around the world? How do we become this incredible instrument for a change? 1 billion dishes, 1 billion products, 1 billion people, all kind of at the intersection of this movement of the global sustainability movement and the vegan movement.
I'm so moved by this, because you just rarely see something that has so many benefits. I can't think of any companies really that do. Even if you look at like the Patagonias or something, some people kind of focus in one area. I don't even know how you're focusing on so many areas. But you are, and you also have raised a lot of capital. And now I just have to ask this, so you just had an equity. I don't know if I'll be able to use the correct terminology here, but
crowdfunding.
Well, I guess it is crowdfunding for a business, which I didn't know that was a thing that you could do. But I'm sorry I missed that, because when you do it again, I'm gonna jump in with both feet.
Oh, thank you. So, we did. We did something we wanted to. We didn't know how it would work out. We'd never done anything like this, but just we of course reward our members, our community with equity for the people that post content, and then for the rest of the community, we wanted to give them an ability to sort of invest into the business. So we launched this earlier this year, and we closed it at the end of April, and the campaign was open for 3 months, and over the course of the 3 months, we raised about $500,000. Which was great, because it was like 300 people that ended up investing anywhere between, and it was amazing. We had people investing. We had teenagers and college students investing $100. We had people in Argentina making their first investment. We had so many people making their very first and only investment that they've ever made. We had a lot of people investing $1,000, and we had the range was $100 all the way to $100,000. We had one person
Really?
that I had no idea who they were. They invested
Really?
$100,000.
Whoa. It feels so good to invest in something that you care that you have such an alignment with. It's hard to do. It's hard to find a company where you feel like all your morals and your values and your goals and your dreams are aligned, and so you can see where kids had put in $100. Of course you'd want to do that. That's very exciting.
It's a big responsibility. I'd say for anyone listening, when I went out, one of the things that was really, I felt in my 30s, I felt this calling as I was getting ready to start a very different kind of business. Where I spent my whole life in a completely different industry. And as I was getting ready to take the next step in that industry, I just really felt a calling that what if I could connect my work and my values and my purpose in life. And going vegan had become sort of this incredibly inspiring part of my life. And I wanted to just introduce that to everyone. And I wanted to make that easier. I will say that it comes with a huge responsibility when you connect your work, your values, your personal life into everything. It also then and then we do things like we raise money from our community. It does create a huge amount of responsibility that I have to take very seriously.
You remind me, as you're speaking, you remind me of the very first person I had on the podcast, which was Lynn Twist, who talks about making a giant commitment to something so big that it sort of owns you, and it tells you what to do every minute of the day, and it helps you make your decisions, helps you get up in the morning. That's what you've done. You made this giant commitment, and you put it out there for the world to see. You gave it a number, you gave it a tangible goal. And I think people want to kind of help someone reach that when they do it. There's some kind of a boldness and courage in naming a number, a billion, especially such an audacious number. It's like, it's an audacious goal. So, I don't know, you've created a lot of goodwill. One last thing I wanted to say about when I because I just want to keep talking about this app, because what I really hadn't thought about before is that you ask these questions about, like, well, how was their, how was their packaging, and how, is it a woman-owned business, or a lot of social value questions that were brought up when you go, like, oh, I don't know. I never thought to ask that restaurant that, but now I will. Like, as I go into someplace, I'll think, who does own this? Is this corporate owned? Is this a mom and pop? Is this LGBTQ owned? Is this something that I want to support with my dollars? So it goes so far beyond the veganism. That's just like one component. That's sort of like your drawing, but
it's all connected.
It is all connected. It's really, I'm so excited about it, if you can't tell. So
it really is all connected. And I think that we have an opportunity to think about really what we put on our plate can create so much impact for so many things. There's so much opportunity around what we put at the front of what we put on our plates. It is connected to, the United Nations has these 17 sustainability development goals. And I tell people every single one of these can be tackled if we just think about what's on our plate. It is such a big opportunity, such a small change, and such a big opportunity to fix, alleviate, and transform the world.
Well, you're helping us all do that. And, all the respect for that, because it isn't that easy. And the more that you can get more people doing it, and you're changing the culture, the easier it is. So, you're definitely doing that. And I appreciate that. Vikas, this has been really educational, really inspiring, and I hope we can spread this conversation around, and hopefully a lot of people listen. And I would encourage everyone to download it onto their phones. If nothing else, it's just fun, it's just fun to see what's out there. And so it's called Abillion, just like it sounds. I'll put links on it in the show notes. And the other good thing is that it shows up first when you do an app search on your phone. It's the first thing that always comes up. Abillion was a good name for you that way. I don't know if you noticed
Thank
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. Whenever I whenever I speak at a conference, Abillion is always listed as the first company,
I thought you must have planned that. I thought that's maybe why you said a billion instead of 1 billion. You didn't. Well, some things you got lucky with.
I didn't, but
anyway.
Thank you so much. If anyone's interested in the, you download the app, please just type in my first name, V for Victor, IKAS, Vikas as your invitation code, and you'll get your first $1 to donate to save a life.
Okay.
On us. So yeah.
Awesome. Vikas, thank you so much. Keep going. I can't wait to see where you're headed next. So we'll be
Thank you so much,
along.
Deborah.
Take care.
Thank you, Deborah.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.